March 3, 1943, the Bismarck Sea, just after sunrise. A Japanese convoy pushes through rough water north of New Guinea. 8 troop transports and 8 destroyers move in formation. Thousands of soldiers are packed aboard. The mission seems dangerous, but possible. Japanese commanders believe they understand the threat facing them. American bombers are known quantities. Their tactics are familiar. Their attacks can be predicted. Then the sky begins to change. Aircraft appear overhead. Engines roar through the clouds. Anti-aircraft guns open fire. Sailors stare upward, expecting the usual high-altitude bombing runs. They have seen them before. They know the drill. The bomb should fall from thousands of feet above. But something is wrong. The American planes keep descending. Lower, lower, and lower still. Soon they are flying so close to the water that it seems impossible. Spray rises beneath their wings. Japanese gunners struggle to track them. Officers watch in disbelief as the bombers race directly toward the convoy. Then the bombs skip. Instead of plunging straight down from the sky, they bounce across the sea like stones thrown across a pond. 1 bounce, 2 bounces, 3, then explosions tear into the sides of transports. Ships erupt in flames. Men are thrown into the water. The convoy's carefully organized formation begins to collapse. In that moment, something far bigger than a battle is happening. An entire set of assumptions about air combat is being shattered. Japanese commanders do not fully realize it yet, but they are witnessing the work of a man who has decided that the traditional rules of aerial warfare are no longer good enough. His name is Lieutenant General George Churchill Kenney. And by the time this battle ends, many Japanese commanders will be forced to admit that they have been fighting an opponent unlike any they had faced before. To understand how this happened, we need to go backward. August 1942. The Pacific War is less than a year old. Japan controls enormous territory stretching across the ocean. American forces are struggling. New Guinea has become one of the most critical battlefields in the war. The environment itself is brutal. Dense jungle covers the landscape. Mountains rise sharply into the clouds. Rain falls constantly. Supply lines are long and fragile. Every operation becomes a logistical nightmare. When George Kenney arrives in the Southwest Pacific area to command Allied air forces, he immediately sees a problem. The existing methods are not working. Many commanders still think according to pre-war theories. Bombers are supposed to fly high. Missions are supposed to follow established doctrine. Pilots are expected to operate within carefully defined rules. Kenney looks at the battlefield and reaches a different conclusion. The Pacific is not Europe. The enemy is different. The terrain is different. The distances are different. If the battlefield has changed, then the rules must change too. Kenney develops a reputation for encouraging experimentation. He listens to pilots. He studies failures. He searches constantly for practical solutions. Many military organizations become trapped by tradition. Kenney does not. If something works, he wants to use it. If something fails, he wants to replace it. This attitude begins producing unexpected results. One of the biggest challenges facing Allied forces is Japanese shipping. Reinforcements, ammunition, fuel, and food move through vulnerable sea routes. Destroying these supply lines could weaken entire Japanese campaigns. Traditional bombing methods often struggle against moving ships. Bombs dropped from high altitude frequently miss. Pilots become frustrated. Results remain inconsistent. Kenney encourages new ideas. Among the innovations emerging under his command is a technique that will later become famous: skip bombing. The concept sounds simple. The execution is terrifying. Aircraft fly extremely low over the ocean. At precisely the right moment, bombs are released. Instead of diving directly into the water, they skip across the surface toward enemy ships. The tactic requires nerve. A small mistake can be fatal. Aircraft must approach through intense anti-aircraft fire. Pilots are exposed. But if executed correctly, the results can be devastating. Kenney supports the idea. Training begins. Pilots practice repeatedly. Techniques improve. Accuracy increases. Japanese commanders are largely unaware of how dangerous this development will become. As months pass, Kenney pushes for additional innovations. Aircraft are modified in unconventional ways. Some bombers receive extra forward-firing guns. Attack profiles become more aggressive. Low-level strikes become increasingly common. The objective is always the same: hit harder, hit faster, and surprise the enemy. Kenney understands something that many military leaders overlook. The psychological effect of innovation can be as powerful as the physical damage. When an enemy no longer knows what to expect, every decision becomes harder. Every report becomes more alarming. Every prediction becomes less reliable. By early 1943, Japanese commanders are beginning to encounter exactly this problem. Reports arrive describing unusual attacks. Pilots describe American aircraft behaving differently. Convoys face increasing danger. Airfields become vulnerable. Supply routes grow uncertain. The pressure is building. Then comes the Battle of the Bismarck Sea. Japanese leaders have an important objective. They need to reinforce Lae in New Guinea. The convoy departing from Rabaul carries approximately 6,900 troops and substantial supplies. Protecting these men is essential. Failure could weaken Japanese operations throughout the region. The convoy's movement is carefully planned. Destroyers provide escort. Air cover is expected. Commanders understand the risks. What they do not fully understand is how dramatically Allied air power has evolved. Allied intelligence detects the convoy. Tracking begins. Preparations accelerate. Kenney's forces move into position. The stage is set. March 2. The first attacks begin. Weather creates challenges. Clouds complicate operations, yet the pressure never stops. Japanese crews remain alert. Tension spreads across every ship. Nobody knows when the next attack will come. The following day delivers the answer. Wave after wave of Allied aircraft attack. Heavy bombers arrive. Medium bombers arrive. Fighters arrive. The assaults come from different directions and different altitudes. Confusion spreads. Japanese defensive systems struggle to respond effectively. Then, the low-level attacks begin. This is where years of assumptions start collapsing. Instead of remaining safely at higher altitudes, American aircraft descend aggressively. Skip bombing attacks strike with shocking effectiveness. Mast-height attacks place bombs almost directly into ships. Strafing aircraft sweep across decks. Anti-aircraft crews suffer heavy casualties. Command structures become disrupted. Fires spread. Formations break apart. Every minute makes the situation worse for Japanese officers watching the battle unfold. The experience is deeply unsettling. This is not simply a convoy under attack. This is a convoy facing methods that challenge established expectations. One transport explodes, then another, then another. Smoke fills the horizon. Burning fuel spreads across the sea. Survivors leap into the water. Escort vessels attempt rescue operations while simultaneously fighting for survival. The destruction becomes overwhelming. By the battle's end, all 8 transports are sunk. 4 destroyers are lost. Thousands of Japanese troops die. The convoy ceases to exist as an effective fighting force. The scale of the disaster shocks Japanese leadership. Yet the material losses tell only part of the story. The deeper impact is psychological. Japanese commanders begin analyzing what happened. They study reports. They examine tactics. They question assumptions. Again and again, they encounter the same conclusion. The Americans are fighting differently, and much of that difference traces back to George Kenney. Throughout the war, Japanese commanders developed respect for opponents who demonstrated adaptability. They understood military innovation because Japanese successes earlier in the war had often depended upon it. Now they are encountering an American commander who refuses to remain predictable. Kenney's approach creates a persistent problem. Traditional military planning relies heavily on expectations. Commanders predict likely enemy actions. Resources are allocated accordingly. Defensive systems are organized around those predictions. But when an opponent constantly changes methods, prediction becomes difficult. Kenney thrives in that environment. He encourages flexibility. He rewards initiative. He expects subordinates to think creatively. This culture spreads throughout his command. Pilots begin searching for opportunities rather than simply following routines. Tactical improvements emerge continuously. Japanese forces face not one innovation, but many. Airfield attacks increase. Shipping losses grow. Supply routes become more dangerous. Gradually, pressure accumulates across the entire theater. Post-war accounts reveal the respect many Japanese officers developed for Allied air operations in the Southwest Pacific. Several acknowledged that American tactics evolved dramatically during the conflict. Others specifically noted the effectiveness of low-level attacks against shipping. What impressed many observers was not merely the technology involved. It was the willingness to challenge convention. Military organizations often become prisoners of their own success. Proven methods create comfort. Comfort creates resistance to change. Kenney constantly fought against that tendency. Even after successful operations, he continued searching for improvements. He never assumed today's solution would remain effective forever. This mindset became one of his greatest strengths. The Battle of the Bismarck Sea remains the clearest example. It demonstrated what happens when innovation, preparation, intelligence, and aggressive execution combine at exactly the right moment. Japanese commanders entered the battle believing they understood the threat. They left it confronting an uncomfortable reality. The enemy had changed. And the rules had changed with them. In the months that followed, Japanese forces continued facing mounting challenges throughout New Guinea and the Southwest Pacific. Allied air superiority expanded. Supply networks suffered. Strategic options narrowed. None of these developments resulted from a single battle. War is rarely that simple. But the Bismarck Sea became a symbol, a warning, a demonstration of what modern air power could achieve when commanders were willing to rethink old assumptions. George Kenney never fit the image of a rigid doctrinal officer. He preferred practical results. If a tactic increased effectiveness, he wanted to test it. If pilots found a better method, he wanted to hear about it. This openness helped create an environment where innovation could flourish. For Japanese commanders studying their defeats, that quality became impossible to ignore. They were not merely facing American industry. They were not merely facing American manpower. They were facing leadership that had learned how to adapt. And adaptation is one of the most dangerous weapons in warfare. Decades later, historians still examine the Battle of the Bismarck Sea because it represents a turning point in the application of air power. It showed that established doctrines could be challenged. It showed that creativity could produce battlefield advantages. Most importantly, it showed that an enemy's expectations can become a vulnerability. On that March morning in 1943, Japanese officers watched bombs skip across the ocean toward their ships. Many had never seen anything like it. In a matter of hours, years of assumptions were shattered by explosions, fire, and sinking steel. The convoy disappeared beneath the waves, but the lesson remained. George Kenney had not simply won a battle. He had demonstrated that the side willing to rethink the rules could force everyone else to play a different game. And when Japanese commanders looked back on the disasters that followed, many understood exactly what made him so dangerous. It was not only his aircraft. It was not only his pilots. It was his refusal to fight yesterday's war. While others trusted established formulas, Kenney kept searching for new answers. That habit transformed the skies over the Southwest Pacific. It helped turn the Battle of the Bismarck Sea into one of the most decisive air-sea victories of World War II. And it left behind a message that still echoes through military history today. The most dangerous commander is often not the one with the biggest army, the strongest fleet, or the most weapons. Sometimes, the most dangerous commander is the one willing to break the rules before anyone else realizes the rules no longer work.